The conference room fell silent as Ethan Caldwell stood up, his smug grin widening. Let's call this what it is. The MMA promotion needs their diversity quota filled. They want their moment before I send him back to whatever small-town gym he crawled out of. But what the arrogant bully failed to recognize was the coiled fury behind those steady hazel eyes. 12 years of dedication, skill, and quiet rage waiting for precisely this moment. Ethan's confident laughter echoed through. The room's cameras captured his every word, completely unaware he had just signed his own downfall. He didn't expect what happened next. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The New York State Athletic Commission Conference. Room buzzed with anticipation as reporters adjusted their cameras and microphones. Marcus Reed sat at the long table, his posture relaxed but alert, hazel eyes scanning the crowd with quiet confidence. Across from him, Ethan Caldwell leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth as he nodded at photographers. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming," announced the MMA representative. "We're here to officially announce the main event for MMA Clash 305, Marcus Reed versus Ethan Caldwell for the #1 contender spot in the middleweight division." Marcus straightened slightly, his hands folded on the table. He'd worked 12 years for this moment, grinding through local dojos and regional circuits to reach this stage. Every scar, every early morning, every sacrifice had led here. "Marcus, how does it feel to finally get your shot at the big time?" asked a reporter from Sportsnet. "It feels like everything I've worked for is coming together," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "I've always believed that hard work and respect for the sport would get me here. Now I get to prove it." Ethan laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the room. "Respect for the sport? Come on, Marcus, let's be honest about what this really is." The room fell silent. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What do you mean by that, Ethan?" pressed another reporter. Ethan's smirk widened. "I mean, let's call this what it is. The promotion needs their diversity hire to have a moment before I send him back to whatever small-town gym he crawled out of. This isn't about skill. It's about checking boxes." A collective intake of breath rippled through the room. Cameras clicked rapidly as reporters exchanged glances. Marcus's hands remained steady on the table, but his knuckles had gone pale. "That's completely inappropriate," started the MMA representative, but Ethan wasn't finished. "Inappropriate. It's the truth. Look at him sitting there all quiet and polite. That's not fighting spirit, that's knowing your place." Ethan stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "But don't worry, Marcus. I'll make sure you remember exactly where you belong." Marcus rose slowly, his movements controlled and deliberate. At 6'1", he matched Ethan's height, but there was something in his bearing that made the room feel smaller. "Is that supposed to intimidate me? Just stating facts?" Ethan stepped around, the table moving closer to Marcus. "You might have fooled these reporters with your humble act, but I see right through it. When we get in that cage, all that fake respect disappears, and we'll see what you're really made of." "I don't need to fake anything," Marcus said, his voice carrying a quiet intensity that made several reporters lean forward. "My record speaks for itself. 19 wins, 2 losses, 14 finishes, but you already knew that." Ethan stopped just inches from Marcus's face, close enough that Marcus could smell the mint gum on his breath. "Records don't mean anything when you're face down on canvas, wondering why you thought you belonged in there with a real fighter." Marcus didn't step back. If anything, he seemed to grow calmer, his breathing steady and deep. "You're going to regret this conversation, Ethan. Maybe not today, but soon enough." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." The MMA representative quickly moved between them. "Gentlemen, let's keep this professional. We have a great fight ahead of us, and that's what the fans want to hear about." Ethan finally stepped back, but his eyes never left Marcus's face. "Oh, they'll get a great fight. You'll get to watch me show everyone what happens when wannabes try to play with the big boys." A reporter from Fight magazine raised her hand. "Ethan, don't you think your comments were out of line?" "Out of line? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. This whole thing is a setup to make Marcus look good before reality hits him. Ethan returned to his seat, still grinning. But hey, I'm happy to be the one who brings him back down to earth. Marcus sat down as well, his expression unreadable. The room remained tense, the easy atmosphere from moments before completely evaporated. "Marcus, any response to Ethan's comments?" asked another reporter. Marcus looked directly at Ethan, then back at the reporter. "My response will come on fight night. That's where it matters." "That's March 22nd at Madison Square Garden," announced the MMA representative, clearly eager to end the conference. "Thank you all for coming." As the reporters began filing out, Ethan stood and walked past Marcus's chair. "See you soon, champ," he said, his voice low enough that only Marcus could hear. "Hope you're ready for what's coming." Marcus watched him leave, his jaw set with quiet determination. The real fight had already begun. 3 days after the press conference, Marcus wrapped his hands in the familiar quiet of Sullivan's gym. The old building smelled of sweat and determination, a sanctuary where politics and cameras couldn't reach. Coach Sullivan watched from the corner, his weathered face creased with concern. "You've been hitting that bag like it owes you money," Sullivan said, adjusting his worn cap. "What's eating at you?" Marcus paused mid-combination, his breathing heavy. "Did you see the interviews yesterday? 3 different reporters asked Ethan about his comments, and every time they let him slide. Heated emotions before a big fight, they said, like what he said was just trash talk. And that surprises you?" Sullivan moved closer, his voice carrying decades of wisdom. "The fight game's always been about selling tickets first, justice second. You know that. It shouldn't be that way." Marcus unwrapped his hands, the tape damp with sweat. "Emma saw the press conference online. You know what she asked me? She asked if I was going to be safe." Sullivan's expression softened. "What did you tell her?" "That I'd handle it in the ring. But coach, what if beating him isn't enough? What if he just keeps running his mouth and everyone keeps pretending it's normal? Then you beat him so badly that even the people making excuses for him have to admit the truth." Sullivan picked up focus mitts from the equipment rack. "But right now all that anger is making you sloppy. Show me your jab-cross combination, clean and controlled." Meanwhile, across town at Elite Fight Academy, Ethan basked in the attention of a small crowd of reporters and training partners. His team had set up the interview in the main training area, with fighters working out in the background to create the perfect atmosphere. "Ethan, some people are calling your comments at the press conference controversial," said a reporter from MMA Insider. "Any regrets?" Ethan grinned as he shadowboxed for the cameras. "Regrets for speaking the truth? Look, around this gym. You see guys from every background here, and they'll all tell you the same thing. Respect is earned, not given. Marcus Reed hasn't earned anything yet." His training partner, a stocky welterweight named Jake, laughed from the bench press. "Ethan's just keeping it real. Some of these guys get one good streak and think they deserve everything handed to them. But don't you think there's a way to express that without the personal attacks?" the reporter pressed. Ethan stopped shadowboxing, his expression hardening. "Personal attacks? I'm talking about fighting ability. If Marcus wants to prove me wrong, he knows where to find me. March 22nd, Madison Square Garden. Until then, everything else is just noise." Another reporter raised her hand. "Social media has been pretty critical of your comments. Does that affect your preparation?" "Social media," Ethan scoffed. "Half those people have never been in a real fight in their lives. They don't understand what it takes to step into that cage. They want everything to be politically correct and sanitized. But fighting isn't a dinner party. It's about who's stronger, who's tougher, who belongs at the top." Back at Sullivan's gym, Marcus worked through his ground game. With his longtime training partner, Chris, the sound of their grappling echoed off the walls as they rolled across the mats. "You see Ethan's latest interview?" Chris asked during a water break. "Dude's doubling down on everything." Marcus's jaw tightened. "What did he say now?" "Same garbage, different day, talking about how social media doesn't understand real fighting, how he's just being honest about skill levels." Chris shook his head. "Honestly, man, it's getting harder to watch. The way he talks about you, it's like he thinks you don't belong in the same sport." "That's exactly what he thinks." Marcus stood up, pacing near the edge of the mat. And the worst part is how everyone's letting him get away with it. You know what the reporter called it? Competitive spirit. Coach Sullivan approached, holding a phone. Speaking of reporters, Emma's been trying to reach you, says it's important. Marcus took the phone, stepping away from the group. Hey, baby. Everything okay? Emma's voice carried a tension he rarely heard. Marcus, I've been getting messages all day. People sending me links to Ethan's interviews, asking if I'm worried about you fighting him. Some of them aren't even about the fight anymore. They're asking if you feel safe, if you think he might try something outside the ring. Emma, you know I can handle myself. It's not about handling yourself. It's about how far this guy might go. The way he talks about you, Marcus. It's not normal competitor trash talk. There's something uglier underneath it. Marcus looked across the gym at Coach Sullivan, who was pretending not to listen, but clearly concerned. I know, but walking away isn't an option. This fight is everything I've worked for. I'm not asking you to walk away. I'm asking you to be careful. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise I love you. I love you too. Just remember, winning isn't worth getting hurt over someone else's hatred. As Marcus hung up, he realized the truth in her words. This had stopped being just about fighting. Madison Square Garden's athlete entrance buzzed with controlled chaos as fighters, trainers, and media personnel moved through the corridors. Marcus walked alongside Coach Sullivan toward the media room, his mind focused on the final press obligations before tomorrow's fight. Remember, keep it simple, Sullivan advised. Answer their questions, stay professional, and get out of there. No need to give them extra material. I know, Coach. Just ready to get this over with and focus on the fight. As they rounded the EE8 corner near the elevator bank, Marcus nearly collided with Ethan and his entourage coming from the opposite direction. The hallway suddenly felt smaller as both groups stopped, the tension immediate and palpable. Well, Ethan said, his voice carrying that familiar, mocking tone. Look who's trying to sneak around backstage. Nervous about tomorrow, Marcus? Marcus kept walking. Just taking care of business, Ethan. You should try it sometime. Ethan stepped sideways, partially blocking the path. Business? That's funny. I was just telling my team about your business. How exactly does someone with your background end up getting handed a title shot? Coach Sullivan placed a hand on Marcus's arm, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Let's just keep moving. No, let him answer, Ethan continued, his voice getting louder. I'm genuinely curious. Did you have to audition for this, or did they just need to fill a quota? Marcus stopped walking, his jaw tightening. Oh, what did you just say? Ethan's smirk widened as his training partners moved closer behind him. Come on, don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. The promotion's been looking for their next great hope from your people. Lucky for you, the bar isn't set very high. My people? Marcus's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. You know exactly what I mean. They parade you around like you're some kind of champion, but we all know this is just about optics. Tomorrow night, reality sets in, and you go back to wherever they found you. Coach Sullivan stepped forward. That's enough, Ethan. You want to settle this? Do it in the cage. Ethan ignored Sullivan completely, his focus locked on Marcus. The funny thing is, you actually believe you deserve this, walking around here like you belong in the same conversation as real fighters. It's almost sad. Real fighters? Marcus's hands clenched at his sides. What makes you more real than me? Everything, Ethan shot back. My training, my background, my understanding of what this sport is supposed to be about. You're just a small-town brawler who got lucky a few times. Tomorrow I'm going to remind everyone what a real athlete looks like. One of Ethan's teammates, a burly welterweight named Jake, laughed. Ethan's just keeping it honest. Some guys earn their way up, others get fast-tracked for the wrong reasons. Marcus took a step forward, but Coach Sullivan's grip tightened on his arm. Don't let him bait you. This is exactly what he wants. Listen to your trainer, Ethan said, his voice dripping with condescension. He's trying to keep you out of trouble, smart man. He knows you can't handle what's coming tomorrow, so he might as well protect you now while he still can. You think I can't handle you? Marcus's voice carried a quiet intensity that made several people in the hallway stop and take notice. I think you're about to find out exactly what happens when affirmative action meets real competition. Ethan stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could see the hatred in his eyes. I'm going to embarrass you so badly that they'll think twice before handing out charity fights to your kind again. The hallway fell completely silent. Even Ethan's teammates seemed uncomfortable with how far he'd pushed things. Marcus looked Ethan directly in the eyes, his voice steady despite the fury building inside him. Tomorrow night, you're going to regret every word you just said. Is that a threat? It's a promise, and when I'm done with you, everyone's going to know exactly what kind of person you really are. Ethan laughed, but there was something forced about it now. Tough talk from someone who's never faced real adversity. Tomorrow, you find out what it's like to fight someone who won't just roll over for you. We'll see about that. Marcus's voice remained calm, but everyone in the hallway could feel the change in him. The respectful professional fighter from the original press conference was gone, replaced by someone who'd been pushed too far. Ethan seemed to sense he'd crossed a line, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. Just remember when you're lying on that canvas tomorrow night that I warned you. I told you what would happen when you tried to play in the big leagues. The only thing I'll remember is the look on your face when you realize you picked the wrong person to disrespect. Coach Sullivan finally managed to guide Marcus toward the elevator. Come on, we've got what we came for. As they walked away, Ethan called after them. See you tomorrow night, champ. Hope you're ready for what's coming. In the elevator, Sullivan shook his head. That boy's got serious problems. What he said back there, I know what he said. Marcus's voice was quiet, controlled, but Coach Sullivan could hear the steel underneath. And tomorrow night, I'm going to make sure he knows exactly what those words cost him. The elevator doors closed, leaving Ethan and his team in the hallway, the weight of what had just happened beginning to settle over them. Madison Square Garden erupted as both fighters entered the octagon. 20,000 fans were on their feet, the energy electric with anticipation. Marcus moved with fluid precision during his warm-up, his face a mask of focused calm. Across the cage, Ethan bounced on his toes, flexing for the cameras and cupping his ear to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening, announced the ring announcer. 5 rounds for the #1 contender position in the MMA middleweight division. The referee called both fighters to the center of the octagon for final instructions. Ethan immediately started talking, his mouth moving constantly as the referee explained the rules. Keep it clean, gentlemen. Protect yourself at all times. Touch gloves if you want to. Ethan extended his gloves mockingly. Ready to go home, Marcus? Marcus ignored the gloves completely, staring directly into Ethan's eyes. Let's find out. The bell rang. Ethan came out aggressive, throwing wild combinations before turning to the crowd with his arms raised. This is how it's done, he shouted, leaving himself open. Marcus capitalized immediately, landing a sharp jab that snapped Ethan's head back. The crowd roared, but Ethan shook it off and grinned. Lucky shot. That all you got, small town? Stay calm, Marcus thought to himself. Let him make mistakes. Ethan continued his antics, doing a little dance after missing a wild hook, then pointing at Marcus dismissively. You're nothing special, just another guy who got handed an opportunity. The first round continued with Ethan constantly playing to the crowd between his attacks. After landing a decent combination, he beat his chest and shouted, "That's how a real fighter does it." But Marcus was picking him apart systematically. He's getting tired from all that showboating, Marcus noted, watching Ethan's breathing become labored. Round 2 began with Ethan more desperate but equally disrespectful. He threw a spinning kick that missed completely, then laughed and shrugged at the crowd as if it was intentional. You think you're winning? Ethan taunted, wiping blood from his nose. I'm just getting started. After eating a hard body shot, Ethan grabbed Marcus in a clinch and whispered loud enough for the microphones to pick up. Your wife's watching this. Hope she's ready to see you get embarrassed. Marcus's composure cracked slightly. What did you say? You heard me. After I'm done with you, maybe I'll show her what a real man looks like. Don't let him get in your head, Marcus told himself, but the fury was building. He exploded with a series of devastating combinations that had Ethan covering up against the cage. Round 3 saw Ethan getting more reckless with his showboating. After getting dropped by a clean right hand, he popped back up and flexed his biceps to the crowd, pretending the knockdown didn't happen. "You hit like my little brother. No wonder they had to give you easy fights to get here." Ethan did a mock bow to the audience, his back turned to Marcus for several seconds. He's completely lost focus, Marcus realized. Time to end this round. 4 opened with Ethan barely able to stand, but his arrogance remained intact. He stumbled backward, then raised his arms as if he was winning, drawing boos from the crowd. "You're still nothing. Even when you win, you'll still be nothing." Marcus had heard enough. He shot for a takedown, driving Ethan to the ground with authority. Ethan tried to scramble, but Marcus's grappling was superior. He transitioned smoothly to Ethan's back, sinking his hooks in deep. "No, no, no!" Ethan panicked as Marcus's arms snaked around his neck. "This is for every racist comment, every insult, every moment you tried to make me feel less than," Marcus thought as he locked in the rear naked choke. Ethan's hands clawed desperately at Marcus's forearm, his face turning red as the choke tightened. The crowd was on its feet, sensing the end. "Tap, tap!" Ethan's corner screamed, but Ethan's pride wouldn't let him. His struggles became weaker, his breathing more labored. Finally, with his vision starting to fade, Ethan's hand slapped frantically against Marcus's leg. "Tap, tap, tap," Ethan gasped. The referee immediately stopped the fight as Marcus released the choke. Ethan rolled away, coughing and gasping for air, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. Marcus stood up slowly, his emotions finally breaking through. The crowd erupted in appreciation for the dominant performance they'd just witnessed. Coach Sullivan climbed into the octagon, grabbing Marcus in a bear hug. "That's how you answer a bully, son. That's how you shut them up." "I told him he'd regret those words," Marcus replied, his voice filled with satisfaction and relief. The official announcement echoed through the arena. "Winner by submission, rear naked choke, Marcus Reed." Marcus raised his arms in victory, acknowledging each section of the crowd. Months of disrespect, racist comments, and personal attacks had been answered in the most definitive way possible. Justice, he thought. Finally, justice. But across the octagon, Ethan was getting to his feet, his team trying to console him. The humiliation was complete, but as his head cleared, the embarrassment was transforming into something much darker. This isn't over, Ethan thought, watching Marcus celebrate. This is just the beginning. As Marcus continued his victory, celebration, completely unaware of the hatred burning in Ethan's eyes, the real conflict was just beginning to take shape. The octagon interview began immediately, with the announcer approaching Marcus in the center of the cage. The crowd's energy was still electric from the dominant performance they just witnessed. "Marcus, that was an incredible submission victory. How does it feel to prove your doubters wrong in such decisive fashion?" Marcus took the microphone, still catching his breath, but smiling broadly. "It feels amazing. All the talk, all the disrespect, all those ugly comments about who I am and where I come from, that's how you answer ignorance, with skill, with preparation, and with heart." The crowd roared their approval as Marcus continued. "I want to thank my team, my wife, and everyone who believed in me when others tried to tear me down with their hatred." Ethan had some very controversial comments leading up to this fight. What's your message to him and anyone else who thinks like him? Marcus looked directly at the camera, his voice carrying conviction. "My message is simple. Your prejudice doesn't make you stronger. It makes you weak. Your hatred doesn't give you power, it blinds you to reality. And tonight, reality just choked you unconscious." The crowd exploded with cheers and applause, but across the octagon, Ethan had heard every word. His face, already flushed from the chokeout, turned crimson with rage. "What did you just say?" Ethan shouted, pushing past his corner team. Marcus turned, still holding the microphone. "I said the truth, something you wouldn't recognize." "You think you proved something tonight?" Ethan's voice cracked with fury. As he started moving toward the center of the octagon. "You think beating me changes anything?" The announcer quickly stepped back as tension filled the cage. "Ethan, the fight's over, man." "You need to shut up," Marcus said. Ethan screamed, his composure completely gone. "This doesn't prove anything. One fight doesn't make you my equal." Marcus set down the microphone, his celebration mood shifting to alertness. I just dominated you for 4 rounds and choked you unconscious. What more proof do you need? Dominated? Ethan's voice rose to near hysteria. By someone like you, this was just one night. This doesn't change who you really are. Someone like me? Marcus's voice dropped dangerously low. There it is again. Say what you really mean, Ethan. Ethan's mask finally slipped completely. Fine. You want the truth? You don't belong in here with real fighters. You never did. This whole thing was just a setup. The crowd's boos were deafening, but Ethan wasn't finished. I don't care what happened tonight. You're still nothing but a... Before Ethan could finish the slur, Marcus lunged forward. Say it. Say what you really think. Ethan swung wildly, catching Marcus on the shoulder. Both men crashed to the canvas as the crowd erupted in shocked chaos. Get off me, Ethan screamed, throwing desperate punches. You want to keep running your mouth? Marcus grabbed Ethan's wrist, controlling his arms. Let's finish this conversation. Within seconds, both corner teams flooded into the octagon. Coach Sullivan reached Marcus first, trying to pull him away. Marcus, stop, it's over. But Ethan's team was pulling him in the opposite direction, and he broke free from their grip. This isn't over, you hear me? This isn't over. Ethan charged again, swinging wildly. Jake, his welterweight training partner, tried to restrain him, but Ethan shoved him away. Let me go, he disrespected me. More security poured into the octagon as the scuffle expanded. Ethan's other teammates joined the fray, trying to protect their fighter while Marcus's corner formed a protective circle around him. You embarrassed me, Ethan screamed over the chaos. In front of everyone, you made me look like a fool. You made yourself look like a fool, Marcus shouted back, trying to break free from Coach Sullivan's hold. With your mouth and your attitude. It took 8 security guards to finally create separation between the two fighters. Ethan continued thrashing against the guards holding him, his face contorted with rage and humiliation. This isn't finished, Ethan's voice carried across the entire arena despite the mayhem. You think winning one fight changes anything? You think it makes you better than me? As security began escorting Ethan toward the cage exit, he broke free one more time, pointing directly at Marcus with pure hatred in his eyes. You better watch your back, Marcus. You better watch your back real careful. I know where you train. I know where you live. This isn't over. The threat hung in the air as Ethan was finally dragged from the octagon, his voice echoing through the arena. You'll see me again. Count on it. Marcus stood in the center of the chaos, surrounded by his team and security. The reality of Ethan's words began to sink in. What should have been the proudest moment of his career had turned into something much darker. Coach, Marcus said quietly. Did you hear what he just said? Sullivan's expression was grim. I heard it, son. We all heard it. 3 days after the fight, Ethan sat in a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of Brooklyn, nursing his 3rd beer and replaying the humiliation over and over in his mind. His face still showed the bruises from the chokeout, a constant reminder of what had happened in front of 20,000 people. I can't believe he said that garbage about hatred and prejudice, Ethan muttered to Jake, who sat across from him at the sticky wooden table. Acting all high and mighty like he's some kind of hero. Jake nodded, his thick arms folded across his chest. That interview was disrespectful, man. He basically called you a racist on national television because that's what he thinks this is about. Everything's about race with these people. Ethan's voice grew louder, drawing looks from other patrons. He can't just accept that he got lucky one time. So, what are you going to do about it? Asked Lucas, another training partner who joined them. You can't just let him get away with embarrassing you like that? Ethan's eyes lit up with a dangerous gleam. Who says I'm letting him get away with anything? I told him this wasn't over, and I meant it. What's that supposed to mean? Jake leaned forward, lowering his voice. It means Marcus Reed needs to learn some respect. Real respect, not the fake kind he gets from reporters and fans. Ethan finished his beer and slammed the bottle down. I know where he trains, I know his routine. Guy's so cocky now he probably thinks he's untouchable. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. Ethan, you're not talking about doing something stupid. Argue the fight's over, man. The fight in the octagon is over. But this isn't about fighting anymore. This is about teaching someone their place. Ethan's voice carried a cold edge that made both men uneasy. "You guys still with me, or are you going to let me handle this alone?" Jake and Lucas exchanged glances. Neither wanted to abandon their friend, but both sensed they were being pulled into something dangerous. "What exactly are you planning?" Jake asked carefully. "Nothing too crazy, just a conversation. A private conversation where Mr. Champion learns what happens when you disrespect the wrong person." Ethan stood up, throwing money on the table. "You coming or not?" Meanwhile, across town at his home, Marcus was trying to enjoy a quiet evening with Emma. The victory celebration had been everything he'd dreamed of, but Ethan's threats kept echoing in his mind. "You've been checking the windows every 10 minutes, Emma observed from the couch where she was reading. "What's got you so worried?" "Just being careful." Marcus said some things after the fight that didn't sound like empty threats. Emma set down her book, concern creasing her features. "What kind of things?" "He said he knew where I lived, where I trained. Said I should watch my back." Marcus moved away from the window, trying to appear calm. Probably just angry talk, but after everything he said leading up to the fight, maybe we should call the police, make a report. And tell them what? That a guy I just beat up is mad about it? They'll laugh us out of the station. Marcus sat beside her, taking her hand. "I'm probably overreacting. Guy just got embarrassed on television. He'll cool off in a few days." But even as he said it, Marcus didn't believe his own words. There had been something in Ethan's eyes during that post-fight chaos, something that went beyond normal competitive anger. Back at the bar, Ethan was finalizing his plan with Jake and Lucas. "Here's what we're going to do. I've been watching his routine. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he goes to that little gym in Queens for evening training, leaves around 9, drives home the same route every time." "Ethan, this sounds like you're talking about jumping the guy," Lucas said nervously. "That's not just a conversation anymore. I'm talking about making sure he understands that what happened in the octagon was a fluke, that in the real world things work differently." Ethan's voice was calm now, which somehow made it more frightening. "Look, I'm not going to seriously hurt the guy, just rough him up a little. Show him he's not as tough as he thinks he is outside of his controlled environment." Jake was still hesitant. "What if someone sees us? What if he calls the cops?" "He won't call the cops. Guys like him, they have too much pride. And even if he does, it's his word against ours. Who are they going to believe?" Ethan grinned, but there was no humor in it. "Besides, after tonight, he'll be too worried about when we might show up again to cause any trouble." The three men left the bar together. Ethan's plan set in motion. What had started as wounded pride was evolving into something much more dangerous. Thursday evening arrived with Marcus finishing his training session at Sullivan's gym. The familiar routine of pad work and sparring had helped clear his mind. But as he gathered his gear, the nagging worry about Ethan's threats crept back in. "You heading straight home tonight?" Coach Sullivan asked, toweling off sweat from their session. "Yeah, Emma's making dinner." "Why?" Sullivan hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Just been thinking about what that boy said after the fight. Maybe you should switch up your routine for a while, take different routes home, train at different times." Marcus slung his gym bag over his shoulder. "Coach, I can't live my life looking over my shoulder because some sore loser made threats. If I start changing everything I do because of Ethan Caldwell, then he wins. Sometimes the smart play is to avoid a fight altogether. And sometimes running from a bully just makes them bolder." Marcus headed toward the exit. "I'll be fine. See you Saturday." As Marcus walked toward his car in the gym's small parking lot, he didn't notice the dark SUV parked across the street. Inside, Ethan sat in the passenger seat with Jake behind, the wheel and Lucas in the back. "There he is," Ethan said, his voice tight with anticipation. "Right on schedule, just like I said." Marcus started his car and pulled out of the parking lot, taking his usual route toward home through the quieter residential streets. The SUV followed at a distance, maintaining just enough space to avoid detection. "You sure about this?" Lucas asked from the back seat, his nervous energy filling the vehicle. "What if he fights back? Guy just choked you out 3 days ago." "That was in his element with rules and referees," Ethan replied, his eyes never leaving Marcus's taillights ahead. "This is different. This is reality." Jake glanced in the rearview mirror. What's the plan exactly? We just pull him over and have a conversation. We corner him somewhere private, teach him some humility, show him that winning one fight doesn't make him untouchable. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. He embarrassed me in front of the whole world. Time for him to understand what that feels like. A few cars ahead, Marcus noticed the same headlights that had been behind him for several blocks. His training in situational awareness, drilled into him by years of competition, made him naturally observant. He took an unexpected right turn onto a side street to test his suspicions. The SUV followed. He's turning, Jake observed, maintaining distance. Stay with him, Ethan ordered. Don't get too close. Marcus's heart rate picked up as he confirmed what he'd feared. He was being followed. He pulled out his phone to call Emma, then stopped. What would he tell her? That he thought someone was following him? She'd insist he call the police, and he still wasn't sure this wasn't just paranoia. He took another turn, this time onto a more isolated street lined with warehouses and closed businesses. If someone was really following him, this would force their hand. He's heading into the industrial area, Jake noted, slowing down as they entered the darker, less populated section of town. Perfect, Ethan said, his voice carrying a dangerous satisfaction. Pull up next to him at the next light. Marcus approached a red light and stopped, glancing nervously in his mirrors. The SUV that had been following him pulled up alongside, and through the tinted windows he could make out multiple figures. The passenger window rolled down, revealing Ethan's face twisted with anger and malicious intent. Get out of the car, Marcus, Ethan called across the space between vehicles. We need to talk. Marcus's training kicked in immediately. Multiple attackers, isolated location, no witnesses. This was a tactical nightmare. I don't think so, Ethan. You want to talk? We can do it somewhere public. I'm not asking. Ethan's voice hardened. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Now it's time to return the favor. The light turned green, and Marcus floored the accelerator, his car shooting forward into the intersection. Behind him, he heard tires squealing as the SUV gave chase. He's running, Lucas shouted from the back seat. Then we chase him down, Ethan replied coldly. He can't run forever. Marcus's hands gripped the steering wheel as he navigated the narrow streets, his mind racing through options. He could try to lose them in traffic, but this area was too deserted. He could drive to a police station, but he wasn't sure where the nearest one was. His phone was in his gym bag in the back seat, too far to reach while driving. The SUV was gaining on him, its more powerful engine closing the distance between them. Marcus realized with growing dread that this chase would end soon, and when it did, he'd be facing three men with nothing but his fists and whatever weapons they might have brought. Marcus's car careened through the industrial district as he desperately searched for an escape route. The SUV stayed close behind, its headlights flooding his mirrors with harsh light. Every turn he took they matched. Every attempt to gain distance failed as their superior engine power kept them in pursuit. Come on, Marcus muttered, scanning the darkened streets for any sign of other people or businesses that might still be open. Behind him, Ethan leaned forward in the passenger seat, his excitement building as they closed in. He's slowing down, running out of road. Jake gripped the steering wheel tighter as they navigated a sharp turn. What happens when we catch him? We have our conversation, Ethan replied, his voice carrying a dark promise. A nice private conversation about respect. Marcus spotted what looked like a main road ahead and gunned his engine, hoping to reach traffic or at least better lighting. But as he approached the intersection, his heart sank. Construction barriers blocked the road, orange cones and warning signs indicating major roadwork ahead. He was forced to turn right, deeper into the maze of warehouses and empty lots. The SUV followed relentlessly, and now Marcus could hear Ethan shouting from the passenger window, "You can't run forever, champ. Might as well pull over and take it like a man." Marcus's car hit a pothole hard, jarring his teeth and causing his gym bag to slide across the back seat. His phone tumbled out, but it was still too far to reach safely while driving at this speed. There, Lucas pointed from the back seat of the SUV. He's trapped ahead. Marcus saw his worst fear realized. The road ended in a T intersection with high chain-link fences on both sides, and the only way out was back the way he'd come, directly toward his pursuers. He slammed on the brakes, his car skidding to a stop just feet from the fence. In his rearview mirror, he watched the SUV pull up behind him, blocking his only escape route. "End of the line," Ethan said with satisfaction as all three men climbed out of the vehicle. Marcus sat in his car for a moment, weighing his options. He could try to ram past them, but that would likely result in a serious accident. He could stay in the car and hope someone would come by, but this area seemed completely deserted. Or he could get out and face whatever they had planned. "Get out of the car, Marcus!" Ethan shouted, approaching the driver's side door. "Let's finish what you started with that disrespectful interview." Jake and Lucas flanked the passenger side, effectively surrounding the vehicle. Marcus realized he had no choice. Staying in the car would just make him a sitting duck. He opened the door slowly and stepped out, keeping his hands visible. "Ethan, this is crazy. What do you think you're accomplishing here?" "What I'm accomplishing?" Ethan's voice cracked with rage. "You made me look like a fool in front of the entire world, called me a racist, said my hatred made me weak." "Because that's what it is," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite his racing heart. "And this proves it. You couldn't beat me in the ring, so now you're jumping me with your friends." "This isn't about the ring anymore." Ethan stepped closer, his fists clenched. "This is about you learning your place, about understanding that one lucky night doesn't change anything." Lucas shifted nervously behind Ethan. "Maybe we should just scare him a little and leave. This is getting out of hand." "Shut up, Lucas," Ethan snapped without taking his eyes off Marcus. "We came here to teach a lesson, and that's what we're going to do." Jake cracked his knuckles menacingly. 3-on-1 seems pretty fair, considering how mouthy he's been. Marcus backed against his car, calculating distances and angles. His MMA training had prepared him for one-on-one combat, but 3 attackers in an open space was a completely different scenario. "You know what the funny thing is?" Ethan continued, his voice taking on a mocking tone. "All those people cheering for you, calling you a hero. They're not here now, are they? It's just you and us, and we're about to show you what a real beating looks like." "If you think this intimidates me, you're wrong," Marcus replied, squaring his shoulders. "I've been fighting my whole life. I'm not going to stop now." Ethan laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the surrounding buildings. "Fighting? You call what you do fighting. You follow rules. You have referees to protect you. This is different. This is what happens in the real world when you disrespect the wrong people." The 3 men began closing in, forming a loose circle around Marcus. There was nowhere left to run, nowhere to hide. The confrontation he'd hoped to avoid was about to begin. "Last chance, Ethan," Marcus said quietly. "Walk away now and we can forget this happened." "The only thing I'm forgetting is how to show mercy," Ethan replied, raising his fists. "Let's see how tough you really are." Ethan threw the first punch, a wild haymaker that Marcus slipped easily. His MMA training kicked in immediately as he countered with a sharp jab that caught Ethan square in the nose, blood spurting instantly. "You want to do this the hard way?" Marcus said, settling into his fighting stance. "Fine by me." Jake charged from the left, throwing a clumsy overhand right. Marcus ducked under it and swept Jake's legs, sending the bigger man crashing to the asphalt with a grunt of pain. "This is insane," Lucas shouted. But he moved forward anyway, loyalty to Ethan overriding his better judgment. Ethan wiped blood from his nose, his eyes wild with rage. "Hold him down, both of you. Hold him down." Lucas grabbed for Marcus's left arm while Ethan circled to the right. Marcus twisted away from Lucas's grip and landed an elbow to his ribs that doubled him over, gasping for air. "You thought this would be easy." Marcus's breathing was controlled despite the chaos. 3-on-1 and you still can't handle me." Jake had gotten back to his feet, more cautious now after being dropped so easily. "He's faster than I thought. We need to corner him." "I don't care how fast he is." Ethan's voice cracked with desperation. "He's just one man. We're 3. Ethan feinted left, then dove right, trying to tackle Marcus around the waist. Marcus sprawled backward, using Ethan's momentum against him, and drove his knee up into Ethan's solar plexus. Ethan crumpled to the ground, wheezing and clutching his stomach. Lucas had recovered from the elbow and came at Marcus from behind, wrapping his arms around Marcus's torso in a bear hug. "Got him. Jake, help me." Jake moved in to throw punches at Marcus's exposed midsection, but Marcus dropped his weight and threw his head back, catching Lucas in the face with the back of his skull. Lucas's grip loosened immediately as his nose broke with a sickening crack. "My nose, he broke my nose." Lucas staggered backward, blood pouring through his fingers. Marcus spun around and caught Jake with a devastating right cross that sent him sprawling across the hood of his own SUV. The bigger man slumped to the ground, momentarily stunned. Ethan was back on his feet, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. "This isn't over, you hear me? This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite breathing hard from the exertion. "You brought this on yourself." But Ethan pulled something from his jacket pocket, a metal tire iron he'd grabbed from the SUV. "Now we'll see how tough you are." "Ethan, don't," Lucas pleaded, still holding his broken nose. "This has gone too far." "It goes as far as I say it goes." Ethan swung the tire iron in a vicious arc toward Marcus's head. Marcus barely ducked in time, the metal weapon whistling past his ear. He grabbed Ethan's wrist with both hands, controlling the weapon while driving his shoulder into Ethan's chest. "Drop it," Marcus commanded, applying pressure to Ethan's wrist. "Never!" Ethan struggled against Marcus's grip, but his leverage was poor and his strength was fading. Marcus twisted Ethan's wrist sharply, and the tire iron clattered to the asphalt. Without hesitation, he swept Ethan's legs and drove him face first into the chain-link fence. Ethan's body went limp as he slumped to the ground, unconscious. Jake was trying to get back to his feet, but Marcus's punch had left him dazed and unsteady. "I'm done, man. I'm done. Don't hit me again." Lucas was leaning against the SUV, blood still streaming from his nose. "We should never have come here. This was stupid. Ethan's crazy." Marcus looked at the three men, Ethan unconscious against the fence, Jake barely standing, and Lucas bleeding and defeated. The adrenaline was beginning to fade, replaced by the reality of what had just happened. "You attacked me," Marcus said, pulling out his phone which had fallen during the fight. 3 against 1 with weapons. That's aggravated assault." "Please, don't call the cops," Lucas begged. "Ethan made us do it. We didn't want to hurt you." "You should have thought about that before you followed me here." Marcus dialed 911, keeping his eyes on Jake and Lucas. "This ends now." As the phone rang, Ethan began to stir against the fence, groaning as consciousness returned. When he saw Marcus standing over him with the phone, his face contorted with fresh rage. "You think calling the police protects you?" Ethan's voice was slurred but venomous. "You think this ends here? I'll make your life hell. I'll destroy everything you care about." "Hello 911, I need police at the corner of Industrial Avenue and 10th Street. I was attacked by 3 men. "Yes, I'll stay on the line." Ethan's threats continued even as sirens began wailing in the distance. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Marcus felt like justice might finally be within reach. The police arrived within minutes, their flashing red and blue lights cutting through the darkness of the industrial district. Detective Sullivan stepped out of the lead car, surveying the scene with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen plenty of street fights gone wrong. "I'm Detective Sullivan. Who called this in?" Marcus raised his hand, still breathing heavily. "From the confrontation." "That was me, Marcus Reed. These 3 men followed me from my gym and attacked me." Sullivan looked at Ethan, who was now sitting against the fence with blood on his face, then at Jake and Lucas, both showing obvious signs of having been in a fight. "And you are?" "Ethan Caldwell," Ethan muttered, not making eye contact with the detective. "The MMA fighters," Sullivan nodded with recognition. "I saw your fight on Saturday, heard about the post-fight incident too." He pulled out his notebook. "Mr. Reed, tell me what happened here." As Marcus recounted the events, the chase being cornered, the 3-on-1 attack, and Ethan's use of the tire iron, Sullivan took detailed notes. Ethan remained silent, but his jaw tightened with each detail. "Mr. Caldwell, you want to give me your version of events?" Ethan looked up with defiant eyes. "We just wanted to talk to him. He attacked us." "With what exactly?" Sullivan gestured to Lucas's broken nose and Jake's swollen face. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like Mr. Reed defended himself against multiple attackers. Jake shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Ethan said we were just going to talk. Shut up, Jake, Ethan snapped. No, Ethan, I'm done shutting up. Jake's voice rose with frustration. You said we were going to have a conversation, not jump the guy in a dark alley. Look at Lucas's face. Look at what happened to us. Detective Sullivan raised an eyebrow. So this was premeditated. You planned to confront Mr. Reed. Lucas wiped blood from his nose, his loyalty to Ethan finally cracking. We followed him from his gym. Ethan had been talking about it for days, about teaching him a lesson. Lucas, I swear, Ethan started to threaten. You swear what? Sullivan interrupted sharply. You'll assault him too, because that's what we're talking about here. Assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy, stalking. You're looking at serious charges, Mr. Caldwell. Ethan's face went pale as the reality of his situation began to sink in. This is ridiculous. He's the one who started all this with his disrespectful comments after our fight. Comments? Sullivan looked incredulous. You're telling me you orchestrated an assault because of something someone said in an interview? He called me a racist on national television. He made me look like a fool. And now you've made yourself look like a criminal, Sullivan replied, coldly. Jake Thompson and Lucas Bennett, you're both under arrest for assault and conspiracy. As two officers moved to handcuff Jake and Lucas, Ethan realized his accomplices were about to abandon him completely. Wait, you can't arrest them, they were just helping me. Helping you commit a felony, Sullivan clarified. Ethan Caldwell, you're under arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, stalking, and conspiracy to commit assault as... The handcuffs clicked around Ethan's wrists. His composure finally shattered. This isn't fair. He embarrassed me. He ruined my career. I had a right to defend myself. Defend yourself? Marcus spoke for the first time since giving his statement. You followed me, cornered me, and attacked me with two other men. That's not defending yourself. That's being a coward. Ethan's face contorted with rage as he was led toward the police car. You think this is over? You think some jail time scares me? I'll be out soon, and when I am, I'll remember this. Keep talking, Sullivan advised. You're just making the prosecutor's job easier. As Ethan was placed in the back of the patrol car, he pressed his face against the window, staring at Marcus with undisguised hatred. This isn't finished. You hear me? This isn't finished. Detective Sullivan handed Marcus his business card. You'll need to come in tomorrow to sign your formal statement. We'll also need photos of any injuries you sustained. What happens now? Marcus asked, looking at the bruises forming on his knuckles. Now Mr. Caldwell learns that actions have consequences. With the weapon involved and the premeditation, he's looking at serious time. Plus, the New York State Athletic Commission will likely ban him from professional fighting. Sullivan closed his notebook. You did the right thing calling us. Guys like this, they don't usually stop until someone makes them stop. As the police cars drove away with Ethan and his accomplices, Marcus stood alone in the empty lot, finally allowing himself to process what had happened. The immediate danger was over, but Ethan's final threats echoed in his mind. The weeks following the attack passed in a blur of legal meetings, medical checkups, and media interviews. Marcus sat in his lawyer's office, reviewing the prosecution's case file one more time before the trial began. His attorney, Laura Mitchell, spread photographs across the mahogany table, images of his injuries, the tire iron, the crime scene. The evidence is overwhelming, Mitchell said, adjusting her reading glasses. Between the physical evidence, the witness testimony from Jake and Lucas, and the clear premeditation, the prosecution has a strong case. Marcus picked up one of the photos showing the bruises on his ribs. It's not about winning or losing anymore. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to someone else. Ethan's lawyer will try to paint you as the aggressor, especially given your comments after the fight. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing for this my whole life, even if I didn't know it. Marcus set the photo down. Every time someone told me I didn't belong somewhere, every time I had to prove myself twice as hard as everyone else, it all led to this moment. Meanwhile, across town in the Rikers Island detention facility, Ethan sat in his cell, staring at the concrete wall. His cellmate, a grizzled man named Carter, watched him with amusement. "You're that fighter, right? The one who got beat up by the guy from Queens?" Carter asked, not bothering to hide his entertainment. Ethan's jaw tightened. "I didn't get beat up. It was 3 against 1, and he got lucky." "Lucky?" Carter laughed. "From what I heard, you and your boys got handled pretty easy. Maybe you ain't as tough as you thought." "When I get out of here, we'll see who's tough," Ethan muttered. "When you get out, boy, you're looking at serious time. Aggravated assault with a weapon, conspiracy. You might want to start thinking about what comes after, not what came before." But Ethan wasn't ready to accept reality. In his mind, he was still the victim, victimized by political correctness, by a system that favored people like Marcus, by circumstances beyond his control. Back at home, Marcus tried to return to some semblance of normalcy. He sat at the kitchen table with Emma, both of them picking at their dinner. "The New York State Athletic Commission called today," Emma said quietly. "They want to discuss your next fight." "I'm not sure I'm ready to think about that yet." "Because of the trial?" "Because of everything. The fight with Ethan, what happened afterward, this whole legal process, it's changed something in me. And I'm not sure what yet." Emma reached across the table to take his hand. "You know what I think changed. You stopped fighting just for yourself. Now you're fighting for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. That's a lot of pressure. It's also a lot of purpose. Before Ethan, I was just another good fighter trying to make it to the top. Now I'm something more." Detective Sullivan had been following the case closely, knowing that the outcome would send a message far beyond the individuals involved. He sat in his office reviewing Ethan's file one more time before the trial. His partner, Detective Lee, looked over his shoulder. "This one getting to you. Cases like this always do. It's not just about the crime anymore, it's about everything that led up to it." Sullivan closed the file. Caldwell had every advantage, talent, opportunity, support, but his hatred poisoned all of it. And Reed? Reed's the kind of man this job reminds you to believe in, someone who faced injustice and chose to fight it the right way. The media attention had been intense, with sports commentators and social analysts weighing in on everything from race relations in MMA to the responsibility of athletes as role models. But through it all, Marcus had maintained his dignity and focus. Coach Sullivan watched his student during a light training session, noting how the events had changed him. The quiet confidence was still there, but it was deeper now, more purposeful. "You ready for tomorrow?" Sullivan asked as they finished. "Up, as ready as I can be. Whatever happens in that courtroom, I know I did the right thing. And after, when this is all over," Marcus looked at himself in the gym mirror, seeing not just a fighter, but someone who had stood up to hatred and won. "After this, I get back to being who I've always been. But maybe now I understand what that really means." The trial would begin tomorrow, and with it, the final chapter in a story that had started with one man's prejudice and would end with justice served. For Marcus, it represented more than just legal vindication. It was proof that standing up to bullies, no matter how powerful or intimidating, was always worth the fight. 6 weeks later, the Manhattan Criminal Courthouse buzzed with activity as Ethan Caldwell's trial reached its climax. The courtroom was packed with reporters, MMA fans, and curious observers who had followed the case from the beginning. Marcus sat in the front row behind the prosecutor's table, Emma beside him for support. Judge Eleanor Harper called the court to order as District Attorney Karen Brooks prepared to present her closing arguments. Ethan sat at the defense table, his expensive suit unable to mask the desperation in his eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Brooks began, "over the past 3 days, you've heard testimony that reveals the true character of Ethan Caldwell. This is not a case about competitive rivalry or hurt feelings. This is a case about a man who believed his hatred gave him the right to hunt down and assault another human being." She walked to the evidence table, picking up the tire iron that had been used in the attack. "This weapon tells the story of premeditation. Mr. Caldwell didn't grab this in the heat of passion. He brought it with him, planning to use it against Marcus Reed. Ethan's defense attorney, Robert Klein, had tried everything to minimize his client's actions, but the evidence was overwhelming. During his cross-examination of Marcus earlier that day, he'd made one last desperate attempt. "Mr. Reed, you've built a career on violence, haven't you? Fighting is literally how you make your living." "I compete in a regulated sport with rules, referees, and medical supervision," Marcus had replied calmly. "What your client did was criminal assault. But you threw the first punch that night, didn't you? After being chased, cornered, and threatened by 3 men, one of whom was armed. That's called self-defense." Klein had grown increasingly frustrated. "Isn't it true that you've profited from this incident? Book deals, interview appearances, increased fighting fees." Marcus's response had been devastating. "The only thing I've profited from is learning that standing up to bullies and racists is always the right choice, regardless of the cost." Now, as Brooks continued her closing argument, she addressed the jury directly. "Mr. Caldwell wants you to believe this was about respect or competition, but listen to his own words from the witness stand yesterday." She read from the transcript. "He needed to learn his place. People like him get one lucky break and think they own the world." Brooks looked up at the jury. What did he mean by people like him? What place was Mr. Reed supposed to learn? Ethan's testimony had been a disaster. When Brooks had cross-examined him, his carefully constructed facade had crumbled completely. "Mr. Caldwell, you testified that you wanted a man-to-man conversation with Mr. Reed. Is that why you brought 2 accomplices?" "I brought backup because I didn't know what to expect." "Backup? You brought backup to have a conversation?" Ethan's voice had risen defensively. "The guy had just embarrassed me on national television. He made me look weak." "Made you look weak or revealed what you actually are?" "I'm not weak. I'm a professional fighter. I've worked my entire life to get to a point where... you could assault someone who beat you fairly?" That's when Ethan had exploded. "He didn't beat me fairly. The whole system is rigged. They wanted him to win because of what he represents. I was set up from the beginning." "Set up how exactly?" "You know exactly how. The media, the fans, everyone was rooting for him because he's black. They didn't care about skill or talent. They just wanted their story." The courtroom had fallen silent at Ethan's outburst. His lawyer had tried to object, but the damage was done. "So, this was about race, Mr. Caldwell?" Ethan had tried to backtrack. "No, that's not what I meant. You meant exactly what you said. You couldn't accept losing to a black man, could you?" Ethan's silence had been answer enough. Jake Thompson had been the prosecution's star witness. His testimony painted a clear picture of Ethan's planning and intent. He said he was going to show Marcus what a real beating looked like, Jake had testified. Said the octagon had rules and referees, but the street was different. He kept talking about putting him in his place. "And what did you understand that to mean?" "At first I thought he was just talking tough, but then he started following Marcus around, learning his schedule, planning when to corner him. That's when I knew it was serious." Lucas's testimony had been even more damaging. "Ethan brought the tire iron from his garage. He showed it to us before we left, said we might need it if Marcus didn't want to listen. I asked him what we were really doing, and he said we were going to teach someone a lesson about respect." Now, as Brooks concluded her closing argument, she faced the jury with quiet intensity. Ethan Caldwell had every advantage in life: talent, opportunity, support. But when faced with a man who had earned success through hard work and character, he chose hatred. When that hatred led to humiliation in the ring, he chose violence. She paused, letting her words sink in. This case isn't just about one night of violence. It's about whether we, as a society, will tolerate people who believe their prejudices justify criminal behavior. Ethan Caldwell stalked Marcus Reed. He cornered him with accomplices. He brought a weapon. He had every intention of seriously harming or killing a man whose only crime was being better than him. Klein's closing argument was desperate and brief. "My client made mistakes. He let his emotions get the better of him. But this was a moment of poor judgment, not the calculated assault the prosecution wants you to believe." The jury retired to deliberate at 3 p.m. They returned at 4:47 p.m. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Harper asked. The foreman, a middle-aged teacher, stood with the papers in his hand. "We have, Your Honor. On the charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to..." Commit assault, guilty. On the charge of stalking, guilty. Ethan's legs gave out and he collapsed into his chair as the verdict was read. His mother, sitting in the gallery, began crying quietly. Judge Harper reviewed the sentencing guidelines before speaking. Mr. Caldwell, you are sentenced to 5 years in New York State Prison with the possibility of parole after 3 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay $250,000 in restitution to Mr. Reed for medical expenses and emotional distress. As the bailiff approached with handcuffs, Ethan looked across the courtroom at Marcus one final time. But instead of the hatred that had driven him to this moment, there was only hollow defeat. This court is adjourned. Justice at long last had been served. 6 months after the trial, Marcus stood in the center of a packed arena in Chicago, his hand raised in victory after defending his newly won middleweight championship. The crowd's roar was deafening as he celebrated with Coach Sullivan and his team, but this victory felt different from all the others. "How does it feel to be champion?" the post-fight interviewer asked, holding the microphone toward Marcus. "It feels like everything I went through was worth it," Marcus replied, still catching his breath. "Not just the training and the fights, but everything. The hatred, the threats, the trial. It all led to this moment. You've become something of an inspiration to many people. What's your message to them?" Marcus looked directly into the camera. "My message is simple. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong somewhere. Work hard, stay true to your values, and justice will prevail. It might take time, but it will prevail." Meanwhile, 2,000 miles away, Ethan sat in his prison cell at Green Haven Correctional Facility, watching the fight on the small television mounted to the wall. His cellmate, Carter, glanced over at him with amusement. "That's your boy, right?" "There," Carter said, gesturing at the screen. "The one who put you in here." Ethan's jaw tightened as he watched Marcus celebrate with the championship belt. He got lucky. One good night doesn't make you a champion. "Looks pretty champion-like to me. Belt around his waist, crowd going crazy, living his dream," Carter chuckled. "While you're counting down 3 more years in here," Ethan turned away from the television, unable to watch anymore. The New York State Athletic Commission had not only banned him from professional fighting, but had also launched an investigation into his past conduct that led to several other fighters coming forward with stories of his inappropriate behavior. His career was over, his reputation destroyed, his future uncertain. Back in Chicago, Marcus made his way through the crowd of well-wishers and reporters. Emma waited for him near the exit, her face glowing with pride and relief. "I'm so proud of you," she said, embracing him as cameras flashed around them. "Not just for winning, but for everything you've stood for." "We did this together," Marcus replied, holding her close. "You kept me grounded when everything was falling apart." Detective Sullivan, who had flown in to watch the fight, approached them with a smile. "Congratulations, champ. Justice looks good on you." "Thank you for believing me from the beginning," Marcus said, shaking the detective's hand, "for taking it seriously when others might not have. Cases like yours remind me why I do this job. Sometimes the good guys really do win." Coach Sullivan joined the group, his eyes moist with emotion. 40 years I've been training fighters, and I've never been prouder of anyone. You didn't just win a championship tonight, son. You proved that character matters more than anything else." As the celebration continued around them, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The racist comments, the violent attack, the trial, and now this. It all felt like part of a larger story about standing up to hatred and refusing to be intimidated. "What's next?" Emma asked as they finally made their way toward the exit. "Next, I defend this title and keep proving that hard work and respect for others is what really matters in this sport," Marcus replied. "And maybe help some young fighters who are going through what I went through." In his cell, Ethan finally accepted what Carter and everyone else already knew. His choices had cost him everything. The hatred that had once felt like strength had revealed itself to be weakness. The prejudice he'd thought gave him power had ultimately destroyed him. The next morning, newspapers across the country carried the same headline, "From victim to victor, Marcus Reed captures championship." The story detailed not just his fighting skills, but his courage in standing up to racist abuse and his dignity throughout the legal process that followed, Ethan would serve his full sentence, eventually being released to a world that had moved on without him. His name became a cautionary tale about the cost of hatred and the importance of accountability. But Marcus's name became something else entirely, a symbol of perseverance, justice, and the truth that character ultimately determines destiny. In the end, the best man had won both in the octagon and in life. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.